Simcha, the celebration of life.
Hi from me, Jared Epstein, and welcome to Simcha, a celebration of life. Today, we'll discover the role of King Solomon. We'll meet the fellows of De Teens and hear about a new educational book project. Shlomo HaMelech, or King Solomon, was the third king of Israel. Ruling Israel for a period of 40 years, he ushered in an era of peace and prosperity for his people. King Solomon is perhaps most famous for building the first holy temple in Jerusalem. Rabbi Liebenberg elaborates further.
The greatest era of prosperity in biblical times was under King Solomon, the son of King David. This was a time that there was great tranquility in the land of Israel. There was great wealth, there was great wisdom. So many different nations came to Israel to see what type of a country it was and to meet with this legendary character, King Solomon. Who was King Solomon? How did he become such a great person? Well, I think the first thing to look at is his name. In Hebrew, he's known as Shlomo, and Shlomo comes from the word shalem, which means to be complete, or it comes from the word shalom, which means peace. He ushered in an era of peace, but he did this because of his completion, his perfection. In particular, when King Solomon was a young man, he had a dream. He had a prophetic dream, and God made an offer to him. He said, "Young king, I'm prepared to give you something. What is it that you want? Do you want wealth? Do you want wisdom? What do you want?" And he chose wisdom. He wanted wisdom. This is what he wanted more than anything. Because when one has wisdom and understanding and intelligence and knowledge, that is the greatest power possible. So King Solomon became the wisest of all men. He was able to mediate between parties that were fighting. He could understand everything. He understood nature. The way that the Talmud puts it is he could even understand the way that animals communicated with one another. So he was a person who brought peace and prosperity to the nation. He actually took the throne when he was a very, very young person. He was just about 13 years old. King David was dying, and he called his young son Solomon over to his bedside and he said, "V'chazakta v'yitel ish." You've got to be strong. You've got to become a man. You're not a man. You're still a young boy. But you're going to now go into a position of leadership, and when a person goes into a position of leadership, you're going to have to be strong. And you're going to have to be courageous. And this is exactly what he did. And the first project of King Solomon was really to fulfill a dream of his father. King David's dream had always been to build a grand temple to the Lord in Jerusalem. And in fact, he had raised all of the funds. But God came to King David and he said, "Yes, you wanted to build the temple, but you're not going to be the one to build it. You're not the right type of a person. You were a warrior. You have blood on your hands. Yes, you were entitled to kill those people. They were enemies. They were threatening the Israelites. But nevertheless, you have blood on your hands. It's not appropriate that you should build the temple. But your son who will come from you, he will build the temple." And this was the first great project that Solomon was involved in. And it tells us that he had a relationship with the king of Tyre, and he sent thousands and thousands of people to Lebanon to go and bring trees. And there were people that hewed rock out of the mountains, and this great temple was built. And it was one of the wonders of the ancient world. People came from all over, from Africa, from the Middle East, to see the wonder of the temple. And if one reads the book of Kings, you'll see how splendid it was, and that every single item was thought of. It was a complex thing. And then, of course, he had a grand opening. And this took place over the Jewish festival of Sukkot, Tabernacles, where he gathered thousands of people together. They made sacrifices. He said a beautiful prayer, and the temple was open. And that first temple stood for over 400 years. This was his first great project. But he had a number of other projects. And we also know him as the author of 3 biblical books. Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, that beautiful love song between the Jewish people and God. And then the book of Mishlei, Proverbs. And lastly, Kohelet, that philosophical work, Ecclesiastes. And the Talmud asks exactly in which order did he compose these works. And it tells us that it was in this order. First it was Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, because that's like a love poem. He was a young man, like a young, passionate young man. Then, when he got a little bit older, it was Mishle, Proverbs. He was thinking a little bit more seriously. And at the end of his life, he looks back and he looks at all of the wealth and all of the different wives that he has, and he says, Hevel Havalim, it's all vanity, it's all worthless. The main point in life is to serve God. And that's when he writes the book of Kohelet, Ecclesiastes. He didn't remain the same person throughout his life. He changed, he progressed. And I think this is perhaps the most important lesson that we can learn from King Solomon, because many people just coast through lives. The way that they were when they were young is the same that they are when they're middle age, is the same that they are when they become a senior citizen. There's no growth, there's no thinking, there's no development. King Solomon shows us that there's a development. I start off young, I have views that I had when I was a young person, but they begin to change, they begin to mature as I reach middle age. And then I look back at my life and I look upon it philosophically. What have I achieved? And King Solomon said, yes, I was a great king and I owned a lot and there was a lot of material wealth. But what are my true possessions? My true possessions are the values that I instilled within myself, that I taught to my children. And most of all, as he ends the book of Kohelet, he says, Sof davar kol nishma, after everything is taken into account, this is the whole of man, to fear God and to perform his commandments, to understand that we're here on life for a mission and to do something greater and bigger than ourselves.
The Dilla Teen Fellows Program is an immersive leadership program, inviting a select group of Jewish 10th and 11th graders from 6 continents and 32 communities to step up, lead their communities, and repair the world. We met with a group of Dilla teens in Johannesburg and heard how this program had impacted their lives.
Dilla Teen Fellows represents Jewish teens around the world. The idea that imbuing our youth with skill sets that will allow them to make a difference in their communities, allow them to have the skill sets to be, leader is a very buzzword, but what the skills a leader would have, those kind of skill sets to be able to get involved in their community and give back to their communities, with the connection between Israel as a strong connection and the diaspora community wherever they may be in the world.
When we start Dilla, first 2 months, we all go and meet each other properly and learn about each other. And then in our sessions, every 2 weeks here in Joburg, we learn a lot of things about communication and just things that really show what a leader is and help us, because we are meant to be leaders of the Jewish community.
The ethos of Dilla is about teaching teens skill sets and giving them through experiences, and then giving them an opportunity to put those skills into practice. So as an example, they get to put a Shabbaton together by themselves. We give them a budget and it's theirs.
So it was a huge responsibility to have to organize the Shabbaton, to have 10 groups under you and to say this is the amount of money I can give you and this is all I can give you, and this is to put deadlines, and sometimes they don't do it and you have to pick up the pieces and do all the work and make sure everything's running smoothly, and then there's always issues and always something comes up, but it just teaches you like so much about how communicating and being precise and organized is so important. It's a huge responsibility though, and it did take up a lot of time, but it really taught me so much, and I couldn't have gotten that from any other position.
Going through Dilla, I've learned how to really talk to people, how to really interact with people, but not through things that you learn in school, because you don't really learn in school things that you can use. Thankfully to Gilad, he's really taught me how to actually engage and how to actually have a platform in which you can actually learn about things that you will be able to use in the future in your life.
In April, the Israeli teens come to South Africa for 10 days. It's called the Jewish Community Mifgash, or JCM for short. And during that time, they're coming here to experience the Jewish community of Johannesburg. And the idea behind that is Israel's the center of the Jewish world. And as a Jew growing up in Israel, you're an Israeli. Everything's around you. The idea that there are actually thriving, flourishing, incredibly huge, brilliant Jewish communities around the world can be a bit of an oddity for an Israeli teen living in Israel. So they'll come to Johannesburg to experience the Jewish community in Johannesburg. They stay with the teens, so we partner up the teens. So they're having home hospitality, they're living in the teens' homes, and we give them an incredible week where they get to meet the community leaders, they get to see the community, they get to go on safari and have the other aspects of South African experience. And that's the part of the program when the Israelis come here.
Being in Israel with the teens and everyone else, and 700 teens around the world, and uniting with the Israelis who we formed bonds with and who came here to Joburg. We get challenged, where we think out the box, we learn, and then also just overall fun.
So when it comes to going to Israel, we create a program during the Israel period of time. It's a week where the Israelis and South Africans now are working together. We have an overall leader of the whole week, and then each day is given a day leader. As a group, they decide on their narrative for the whole week, they decide on their theme for the whole week, and then each day the different groups decide on their theme for the day and what activities they want to do. They get given a budget again, and this becomes the challenge is it's over a continent, you've got communication differences. How they communicate, whether they're using WhatsApp or something like Google Hangouts, the fact that they get these long things in Hebrew and they have to try figure it out, and the Israelis and have to translate it. It's all those challenges that come down to practical skill sets in the real world. Those are real experiences, as opposed to sitting down and going, okay, in theory, if you were going to do this and this and this, how would you handle it? Here they're actually getting that practicality. It's very much experiential-based learning.
What I'm expecting from Israel is, I think it's going to basically be what this whole year of Dilla has been, in sort of like a condensed nutshell in a different country. So what that means is that it's going to be this experience of a vast number of different things, different people, different places, all coming at you at once that overwhelms you at the start, but then once you look back on it, you're like, I can't believe I went through that. And I can't believe how amazing that was for me, because that's just what Dilla's been. I've been through so many things that I've never thought I'd be able to go through, and met so many people and formed relationships that I didn't think were possible.
So at the end of the year, of the Dilla year, we look for 2 teens that have gone through the process that can come on the program again as junior counselors. And they get to basically go through the same program, they go to Israel, but they come as now from the educational point of view. They're involved in running it, which again is very much in that ethos of Dilla, is that the teens, we're giving them the skill sets to actually do the program. So these teens come on the program for a second time. They go to Israel a week before we join them in Israel. They are on a seminar with all other junior counselors from around the world, and they run the international Shabbaton for 360 teens when we go to Israel. They're the ones running the program.
When I arrived at Israel, obviously I didn't know what to expect. I'd been doing Dilla for at least 6 months before, just a little less than that. And I had a grasp of what Dilla was, and I had already felt myself growing. But when arriving there, all I knew is that I was going to hopefully grow as a person, discover the true meaning of Jewish identity, team integrity, but also the inner person I am.
Definitely include Dilla in my identity, and it helped me in real life at varsity today, because it forces you to break out of your bubble, to interact, to have intellectual conversations, to get to know people on a deeper level and form connections. So at university, I'm a drop in the ocean. There's thousands of people surrounding me all the time. So it was just like that in Israel when it was all these countries surrounding us. So it's helped me to realize that you connect with certain people, you don't connect with certain people, and you need to make the effort, because if you don't make the effort to go speak to people, to go find yourself, then it's not going to happen.
What I found with Dilla Teen Fellows is that it's not just Israel, and it's not just the program. It's to guide you from the program to Israel, to your community week, to everything else after that, to the person you are after then. And I've seen myself grow from it. So I don't see so much Israel as being my expectations. I see my expectations for what comes after Israel. And then in everyday situations, in everyday life, you actually see this growth in you. Your expectations of what you expect from people, what you expect from yourself, what you expect to grow, just changes completely.
I've learned so many leadership skills and how to control many different situations, and I've learned so much about myself. I think it will help me a lot in the future with a job, with my family, with my friends. It's taught me to communicate properly. It's taught me to organize my life, to make sure that everything's up to scratch and never leave anything behind, to be precise, be intact all the time, and to show everything that you're capable of throughout your journeys through any path. So I think it will really help me with my future.
What I gained from running the Dilla program over the last 4 years is the ability to work with teens. That's my passion, to be able to be given 20 teens per year and be told, go ahead, no, just do what you do. That's been an absolute pleasure. It's a treat, because these teens they're brilliant, they're engaging, they're challenging. My highlight is, I know I've done a good job when the teens, by the end of it, when I say something and they tell me, no, I don't agree with you, and they'll challenge me on it, but they won't let go, they'll challenge me. I know I've done a good job.
Chabad House offers scores of projects across the country. Their latest project is one of commissioning and publishing a series of children's books called Grow Your Life. Rabbi Masinta talks about this series, as well as other books printed under their support.
The very last commandment in the Torah is God's commandment, Va'ato kisvelachem es hashira hazois. You shall write for yourself a Torah. Now, in the olden days, there was a mitzvah to actually write a scroll. If you weren't able to write one, you had to employ a scribe to do it for you. But then when the book came out, Jewish law debated what was the purpose of the commandment to write a Torah. Was it that you had to write a Torah, or was the purpose that you had to have something godly to learn from? So Jewish law passed the law that, in fact, the law, the commandment, how do you fulfill the very last commandment in the Torah? To write for yourself a Torah, you purchase Jewish books, you purchase holy books. And if you purchase a holy book and you find a mistake in one, then you have a mitzvah to correct it. And that's the way you fulfill the mitzvah. Nonetheless, there's still a push to write a Torah, to be part of the publication of a Torah, and which is done. But the main mitzvah of, the way you fulfill the main mitzvah of writing a Torah is by purchasing Jewish books. In 1973, the Lubavitcher Rebbe came out with a campaign that people should have holy books in their home. One of the reasons is that if you have a holy book in your home, there's a holy energy, there's a godly energy. And I think the second reason is that, of course, that if you open a book and you learn from the book, you grow in every way. Now, if you go back to the 70s when the Rebbe launched this campaign, there were very few English Torah books. But the Rebbe came out with this campaign, and as a result of that, publication after publication was produced, and today there's an array of the most outstanding Torah books in Hebrew, in English, in Yiddish, in Spanish, in Russian, etc., etc. Now, over the last few years, what we've done in order to get people to participate in this, to participate in fulfilling the very last mitzvah in the Torah of purchasing Jewish books, purchasing Torah books, and also having Jewish books in the home, we came out with a program where we took a publication, we got the rights to it from overseas, and we invited people to participate by sponsoring a chapter in the book. Their names would go in the back of the book, and they would get a free copy of the book. So it's a very exciting project. Now, you know, the process in producing these books that we've done, some have been classics. Tanya, the philosophy of Chabad, written by the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, which is really a manual for the soul. It's a manual for life. It teaches us how we have two parts within us, a godly and an animal, and our entire life is a struggle to overcome the animal. And every single time we do overcome a negative thought, whether it be a depression or a lust or an anger, we actually are creating light in the world. After the Tanya, we moved on to Hayom Yom, Hayom Yom is a book written by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and it's just a thought for every day. Now, you know, the most amazing thing about a short thought for the day, you can wake up and you can just be inspired with a short thought that will change your life, that will give you such an inspiration for the day. That was the second book we did. We then did a book called Letters from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, based on faith and belief. And the Rebbe had such an insight into people who've gone through difficult times or facing challenges, and how the Rebbe says that, the Rebbe explains in many of the letters that by positive thought you actually create a positive energy that can change the reality. It's an outstanding book. The book that followed that was a book for children called Sefer HaMitzvahs, the book of mitzvahs, written by the Rambam, Maimonides. There are 613 mitzvahs in the Torah. They were very unclear and very hard to find. The Rambam, Maimonides, actually published a book where he listed the mitzvahs in encyclopedic form. So it's an outstanding book and very simple, and just gives a person an overview of every mitzvah that we're commanded to do. After the Rambam, we did discourses of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Outstanding discourses, very mystical discourses which the Rebbe had said, and we took them and published them, and people participated in them and got a copy. Last year we did the Torah. It's a new translation of the Chumash, of the Bible, but it's also got very short but outstanding insights, and very readable, very easy to read. And there we had a whole program where we got people to participate, and anybody who couldn't afford a Chumash, we had a program where we actually gave them a Chumash for nothing. Now, besides our Torah books, as people we have to worry about ourselves, we have to better ourselves, but at the same time we have to better the world around us. Now, we're living in a country where so many people are underprivileged. So many people don't even have the opportunity to get books to read. So over the years, we've opened about 20 libraries, but we've also produced a series of books, 7 on basic values and 4 on entrepreneurship. And we have a program with the schools where we go into underprivileged schools and we get the principal to sign up, the teachers to understand the objective, the kids get the books, they're very well bound books, they're not pamphlets, full color, and the kids have to read the stories and then do an exercise afterwards, and then they're rewarded for it. So it's been just such an exciting program. But you know, when a person is afforded the opportunity to learn, it's like switching on a bulb in the person's brain, and all of a sudden a person comes out of darkness into light, and that's what we have to do for people. So when we look at this country, there is just so much opportunity to educate, to uplift, and to allow people to get to the level where they are living life to its fullest. And I would like to say that I really believe that the definition of religious means living life to its fullest. And every mitzvah that God gives us in the Torah is there to enable you to live life to its fullest. The reason why we wear a yarmulke is, you see, you have to live life to its fullest. But what happens if you want to do something naughty? So you have this little yarmulke on your head that reminds you there's somebody above you watching everything you do. And the same thing applies to every other mitzvah. It's there to get you to live life to its fullest. So let's get everybody reading, and let's get everybody having a dream.
We've reached the end of this week's episode of Simcha, a celebration of life. I miss talking to you, so please send us a Facebook message at Spirit Sister Productions. From me, Jared Epstein, and the Simcha team, remember, we can't always build a future for our youth, but we can always build our youth for the future.